I've actually been in sales and aesthetics for about 16 years. I started at a publication called New Beauty. I ran the Northeast Doctor program for them. And I found that when I was opening my med spa, even though I had come in with all of this information, I was connected in the field and I still just felt a little bit lost. And I found I just needed resources. And I realized that there could be, a business here helping people get started. And so putting that all together, I started Med Spa Matchmaker about 4 years ago, and the rest is history.
Want to attract and convert more leads? Want to learn how digital PR, branding, and SEO can establish and build your brand identity? Welcome to the Market Movers Building Brands and Links with Linkify podcast. We answer these questions and help you ramp up your brand visibility and credibility. Let's cut through the noise and make your business the talk of the town. We're your hosts, Nick and Chris. Let's get this show on the road.
Welcome to the Market Movers podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Gina Graziano, founder of the Med Spa Matchmaker and an aesthetics consultant with experience across marketing, devices, injectable sales, and practice operations. Today, we're going to be having an amazing conversation on how med spas can differentiate their brand, escape price competition, improve conversion, and build visibility across Google and AI platforms. Welcome to the show, Gina.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you. So tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got started in the med spa space and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I have been a sales rep through my whole career up till this point. So I've actually been in sales and aesthetics for about 16 years. I started at a publication called New Beauty, which is all about cosmetic surgery and injectables and don't buy your Botox on Groupon sort of thing. And that was my first entry into aesthetics. I ran the Northeast Doctor program for them and got to meet some amazing derms and plastics and learn about all of these beautiful treatments. And thus began my obsession with the aesthetics field. I've sold many things over my career: injectables, fillers, biostimulators. I've sold salmon DNA and exosomes. I've sold devices, lasers, microneedling, RF microneedling. And after all of that, I decided to go out on my own and open a spa. And I found that when I was opening my med spa, even though I had come in with all of this information, which I think is, more than most have entering the space, which is I knew every vendor, I knew how to negotiate down to what I should be paying for everything. I was connected in the field. And I still just felt a little bit lost. I was learning about OSHA compliance and membership compliance. I had to enact a legal team to make sure I was doing things the right way. I had to understand my state's laws in terms of commission programs and what was acceptable. And I found I just needed resources. So after putting it all together, I started helping some of my friends in the industry that were getting into their own spas. And I realized that there could be, a business here helping people get started. And I also have my master's in marketing from Fordham. I think understanding the sales operations and marketing side of the practice are really the core of what makes a business successful. And so putting that all together, I started Med Spa Matchmaker about 4 years ago, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. So you put all of that knowledge together inside of Med Spa Matchmaker and you can help others sort of navigate the difficulties that you found. So what were you had so much knowledge going in, setting your own spa up. You'd done so much. It was almost, like you would imagine you would have just been an instant success. So what were those biggest roadblocks? What were those biggest hurdles that you had to navigate?
I think we hear a lot of noise in this industry, but what's actually legal and allowed is very different than what we see, right? Even when it comes to marketing, we're marketing medical services. So there's a lot of nuance to understand. What can I say about Botox? What can I say about medical weight loss? What's not going to get me shut down in Google, right? And then when you hire people, there are certain boards that you have to be upstanding with. So the Board of Cosmetology, OSHA compliance, all of these things are kind of mysteries, and you have to just go online and figure out what they are and what applies to you. So I just realized there wasn't one source, and that's why my name is Med Spa Matchmaker. I don't handle everything in-house, but I know who to connect you with as a resource. And so, I save my practices a lot of time and a lot of money, not redoing things, making costly mistakes, and doing things the right way, from the jump. And that's my whole focus: is do things once, do it right, save money, save time, and do it the right way.
Okay. And does all of this sort of red tape and bureaucracy vary from state to state as well? So
for sure,
another
absolutely
layer of complexity. Yeah. Right. So what is the blueprint then that anyone opening a med spa now should have in place like several months before they actually open?
Yeah. So opening a spa, we have a certain cadence that
Hmm.
we roll out certain initiatives, right? So I usually start with branding and marketing because number one, a website takes usually 3 to 4 months, but the branding really dictates everything we do in a practice, right? So we have to make sure our name's available and that we can grab our social media handles. We have to make sure that that branding matches the person that we're trying to serve, right? Who is my ideal patient? Who am I speaking to? What challenges are they experiencing in life? And then how can I form my services and my menus and my memberships to really speak to that person and be the med spa for that person, right? So I do a lot of marketing and branding work up front. And then we go through things like finding our space, building out our space, hiring, making sure we have all of our behind the scenes, our EMR, our OSHA compliance, all of our consent forms, that we have time to buy our machine and practice before we start, working on actual patients. So our soft launch plans, our friends and family, making sure we get our before and after photos set up. And then you start seeing patients, and that always changes the flow of things. We might find we need more staff, less staff. We might find we need to optimize differently. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work before you even open your door. And then the real work begins when we start seeing patients and getting data and understanding where maybe our process is breaking down. Are we converting as many patients as we should? Are we retaining as many patients as we should? Is our staff utilized as well as they should be before we incur, more fees and bring on more staff? So not only do we do all the founding steps, but we work with a lot of practices that have been in business 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and the landscape's changed. It's different. It's
Mm.
harder to retain your patients. They have a lot more choice. And so we really look at perfecting those internal systems for our more established practices to make sure we're converting and all of our marketing dollars are used well, right? If I convert only 2 out of 10 patients
Mm.
versus 8 out of 10 patients, my marketing budget, dollars, and what I expect out of it is completely different. So I really focus on the systems, getting all of the background, kind of unsexy, behind the wall stuff really laid down so that we can have a successful practice.
Okay. So you told me before we came on, we had a pre-call that like the med spa space was getting increasingly more competitive. So
Yes.
I imagine brand now is the sort of the one differentiator that is going to allow businesses to not only survive but thrive.
Yes.
And so I think you're completely right that you take all of this time pre-launch to like have that. But actually that is like, if you don't do that, you potentially are dead in the water, not just with,
Totally.
if you don't have that USP, if you don't, so that's super interesting. And then also I'm wondering if that is like you just touched on at the end there where you talked about how more established spas, maybe spas that have been in business for 2, 3, 4 years and hadn't done this, actually they're finding that that's what they need to do in order to turn the corner. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. We all offer the same services and we can only rush to the bottom on things like toxin, for so long. That's not a brand building strategy, right? So the strongest practices I see have a really strong brand. It's the way that you stand out in this market. We have over 11,000 med spas in the United States right now. And to put that in perspective, there are 11,500 McDonald's in the United States. So med spa has really become super commoditized, and you can compete on price, but that's not really a great strategy right now when you have these huge chains and multi-location practices that have buying power and get better prices, better cost of goods on those things. So rather than racing to the bottom, the differentiator is branding for sure.
Okay. And what about like the quality of the service through the strength of like the doctors that are performing like the more complex surgeries that require more recovery?
Sure.
Like, is that something which can help or should be a consideration?
Definitely. Look, there's kind of a baseline expectation, right, that we're going to see a good clinician, right? I think if people are doing bad work or they're a bad clinician, you're not going to survive, obviously. It's kind of, just assumed that if you're performing these treatments, you're good at them, right? Surgery is a whole nother echelon because that's so specific. It's artistic, right? It's almost like sculpting a patient. And it really depends on that surgeon's hands. And we see that a bit in the med spa space with things like filler, right? There is an art to it and an eye to it. But a lot with med spa is not so dependent on the provider. Botox goes in the muscle, right? Dosed. Lasers. Doesn't really matter who's performing it. Yeah, someone can be a little more thorough, but it's not that huge differentiator that we might think. So it's really the trust in provider is why people stay. And it's a very important part, obviously. But so much of it is about the consultation process, the plan that we set long-term for the patient, how we discuss their options and how many of those options do we have for that patient, right? Taking the
Mm-hmm.
example of non-invasive body contouring, I don't know if you're familiar with cool sculpting or sculpture, but these are non-invasive ways to get rid of fat and sometimes tighten skin or affect the muscle. And when cool sculpting came out, we saw this phenomenon where plastic surgeons were buying this non-invasive body contouring left and right. And we were a little confused because we thought, isn't this supposed to open up a category for people that don't do things like lipo? But we found that the providers that had every option and then coached their patient through it and said, I can give you whatever you want. I've got it all. But for you, this is really what I recommend. Those consultations closed, 8 or 9 times out of 10. And so having
Right.
everything, educating the patient, and making them see that your option is the best option for them is really where patients are kind of won and lost, and loyalty is won and lost. So it's not enough to be a great provider. You have to have a wonderful consultation process, and people have to be clear about what your ethos is, what your approach is, and what makes you different.
Okay. And just as I'm having this conversation with you, I'm thinking one other thing which I want to ask is being at the forefront of like new procedures a good way of differentiating, like, that med spa always has the latest and greatest, like you just said about when what was it called, the one you just talked about, when that came
Cool
out, all of the
sculpting,
plastic
yeah.
surgeons started, cool sculpting, like, is that a consideration?
Right. So sometimes, right? No risk, no reward, right? So if you take a risk, the people that took the risk on cool sculpting very early on made millions of dollars, right? That's not always the case with a new device. You're kind of taking a risk. It could flop or fly, right? But more importantly, does that device or service fit with your patient mix, right? We could have a brand new, fully ablative CO2 device that rips your face off and starts over. But if I'm just doing facials and microneedling, that's a really big jump, right? If my patients are younger in their 20s and 30s, we're not there yet, right? We're not at that point of correction where we need that device. So with a grain of salt, I take new technology. You can ride that wave. And if your patient base is prepped, if it's the appropriate base for that device, right? We're not doing lasers on skin of color sometimes. So like certain things just don't make sense in certain patient populations. So as long as you understand that, and then we do the pre-work to pre-sell, pre-vet, right? And make sure that service is wanted, then yeah, it could very much pay off to be an early adopter. Other times we make more calculated decisions to bring in, I'm going to call them less sexy technologies, hair removal, regular skin tightening, maybe an IPL, right? To kind of serve the base population. And then we take our chef's knife and bring something really fun and specialized once we've had some proof of concept with those baseline lasers.
Okay. So I think the lesson here is you really need to know your audience, know your customers.
Absolutely.
To sort of tailor what you're doing. Around that. Okay. Let's move on to customer acquisition then. What is working in 2026 for customer acquisition? Maybe I'll just ask that first, then we can dive into that based on what you tell me.
Yeah. Look, I think for anybody who's established, the easiest way for customer acquisition is working your current pool of clients and getting referrals. And that is a free to low cost way to attain new clients, right? And those people will already have a glowing review. They already are warm coming into your office. And generally, we can set up referral programs where if somebody books and you refer them, you're getting a $25 credit or a $50 credit, which is usually way less than the cost of acquisition through things like Google, right? Especially for more specialized services. I can see the cost per lead with Google going anywhere from 100, 150 and up if we're doing more specialized things like surgeries or, BBLs with Sculptra, like very, very specific treatments can cost even more. So I'd say first, we work our current base and we work our referrals. We throw events, we do timed specials. We look at creating things like VIP memberships and programs to retain and draw in new patients for pricing, but they're locking into your practice for a year. That's where I always start. But if you're brand new and we don't have, I call it butts and seats just yet, and we're starting from scratch, there's a few ways to go about getting new patients. Google is probably the number one way I see people still trying to acquire patients, just by Google search. And I find that the more granular you get with that search, the cheaper it is, and the more specific your patient is. So if I'm just looking for Botox in New Jersey, that's going to be a much more expensive strategy than if I'm looking for, forehead wrinkle relaxers in Great Neck. So there's some strategy
So
there.
Google organic then?
Google organic and Google paid. But with Google paid, there are some more considerations. Generally, we see people advertising services that net over $400 for the practice, because that cost of acquisition can be up to $150. You still have to pay the provider, you have consumables and costs for running that time and room time. And so to at least break even on that marketing, we need to at least advertise a $400 service. So in med spa, that limits us. That's usually not many of our facials. Sometimes that's not our microneedling. So it's our lasers and our injectables. And injectables are often discounted. We see $9 a unit, $8 a unit, super, super cheap, where people, again, are almost okay with not making money or even losing a little bit on that first visit in an effort to retain. But then your strategy to retain has to be very strong. Your consultation process has to be very strong, right? Your retention and follow-up has to be strong. And the experience of the office has to match what your branding is and what you're promising your patient. So we can advertise on Google, we can advertise on social, and Instagram and Facebook are still very popular ways to get patients. We are a heavily before and after based business. And so those photos show really, really well on social. Otherwise, I'm finding people are getting very creative back in their community. We have, because of the commoditization, and you scroll on Instagram and you get 17 ads for different spas. When we come at a more local approach, it's actually working again. We're seeing that revert back where things like mailers, events in the industry, partnering with local businesses that are complementary, things like hair salons, boutiques, private fitness practices. I've even had people put gift cards in hotel guests, hotel packages when you check in to nice high-end hotels nearby. I've had
Nice
people
idea.
put gift cards in like Mercedes vendors packets, right? You can get very creative. Or if there's certain large companies around you, you can even speak to their HR teams about being a part of their wellness program or employee perks and offering some sort of HRT, GLP-1 consult, in those sorts of things. So there's a lot of creative ways that we can market. It's not as easy as just putting up an ad anymore and patients flowing in. It's kind of a combo strategy of local integration, Google and Meta, ads and search, and then using your own base as a jumping off point.
Okay, I love that. I love those more creative ways, like flyers in the Mercedes dealerships, things like that. That's brilliant. Right. Okay, so yeah, all of the paid stuff makes sense. I think one of the best ways that med spas can obviously get customers is through organic, not paid.
Absolutely.
Be considered a trusted provider inside of Google or the large language models, and then hope that, you are surfaced when people are making those like discovery journeys. But one thing, we've done a lot of research with AI discoverability for med spas, and what we're noticing is that the med spas that do well, that the likes of ChatGPTs and Perplexities are the ones that demonstrably show on the website all of the information which shows them to be trusted. And that's things like before and after photos, like pre and post procedural information, expected recovery times, the specific names of the clinicians or the technicians behind different procedures. And the ones that aren't doing well are the ones where that information is extremely thin. Is this something which you are also seeing on your end?
Definitely. There's a happy medium between just keyword stuffing a website and then giving it enough information so that Google knows who you are, right? And that what you're saying all makes sense within the site. So I'm big on making sure we update. I tell my clients at least quarterly. I don't think anybody's really good enough to do it monthly. So quarterly, reviewing our website. What services have we added? What have we changed? What memberships have we launched? What staff members have joined us? The blog component, or like continuing to add some fresh content at least once a quarter, I think is kind of the bare minimum. And yeah, it has to reflect everything that you do, regardless if somebody tells, it's a referral and I tell you to go to your spa, or I find you on an ad, everything directs back to the website. And often our booking features are on the website as well. So it has to be representative of what we do. And I really love when practices use photos and videos to tell the story as well. Those give you a much better sense of who somebody is. You feel like you know the provider walking in, you feel like you know the experience, you know what to expect. And so 80% of your consult is almost done at that point. So that good marketing can do a lot of the work for you and not put so much on the shoulders of your employees, which is helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Gina, when you talk about what you do in terms of matchmaking and the sort of the difficulties in navigating the complexities of the med spa world, what do you think about AI in terms of people sort of trying to circumnavigate this themselves through like deep research and AI models? Like, do you think it's at a point yet where they can do that, or do they still need to use, somebody who knows firsthand what they're doing?
So there's definitely, with AI, it really depends on your brand, how much it makes sense to incorporate, right? So if my brand is, we're very bespoke, we take an hour with you to consult with you and walk you down your anti-aging or pro-aging journey. We really want to understand what drives you, and we're going to build a full plan, not only on your aesthetic side, but on your wellness side and get you to your goals. It doesn't necessarily make sense for then a 30-second AI bot to be handling that, that intake or follow-up, because we're preaching bespoke consultative services, right? But AI is used a lot in scheduling, in email automation and text automation, so that you don't need a salesperson to follow up 7, 8, 9 times with a lead. You can put it through an automation and just kind of try to re-engage a patient. AI can also tell us a lot of insights. So we're seeing a lot of EMRs that have an AI component that can almost suggest, based on previous purchasing history or procedural history, what might be of interest to that person next, which is amazing for marketing. We see it a lot in the lead capture side. So Go High Level and Podium and all of these, entities have AI built into them, so you can automate parts of your sequence. We use AI a lot for verbiage, so we don't have to sit there and lament over a post anymore. If I have the general idea, AI can help me spit out, a grabby post with a call to action. So we see it all throughout, and I think you can absolutely lean on AI in a lot of the practice. But where you can't lean on AI is for the strategy, right? Because every single med spa that is looking for a strategy is going to get the same answer from AI. It's not specialized. It's not tailored to you. And at the end of the day, I think working with people that are in the space, know the limitations of the space, really know what you can and can't say, is going to be a better guide for you than AI. I've seen people get into trouble using AI with Google Ads especially, and then their whole page is shut down because they've advertised a medication, and Google just doesn't understand, or ChatGPT doesn't understand the nuances of what marketing is in this medical aesthetics field. So I'd say for baseline understanding, for a little bit of help in the outreach, standardized outreach, and for help creating or fleshing out concepts or ideating concepts to post on social, use Away. But for anything that really matters, roll out in the practice, pricing, anything that affects your EBITDA, consultation and sales process, those are all human, things that need a human eye, in my opinion.
Okay. This fascinating stuff. Anyone who's got a med spa, I hope you've listened to all of this episode. Gina, I thought you've got some really creative and great ideas. So one of the things that for med spas, any local business, one huge driver of success is reviews. And we know that like developing a good, manageable, repeatable, review strategy is difficult. So I'm wondering if you've got any suggestions, things that you've seen work well in the med spa industry.
Yeah. So look, if you have someone who's super happy, right? They come in for their 2-week
ask them
touch-up,
for a review.
ask them for a review, right? And a referral for that matter, right? So I find we don't always capitalize on people that are super happy, which doesn't quite make sense. On the flip side, I have a lot of clients that actually wait for that 2-week review, especially after an injectable, to make sure they have the opportunity to correct anything and make the patient super happy before they ask for a review. Others just automate it completely. So 24 hours after their appointment, you're going to get a text or an email asking how your service was, with a little incentive to fill out the review. And I find giving them the link, making it very, very easy, putting a QR code at the front when they're checking out, just so it's nice and easy, will help with that capture. But running contests and running little incentives for reviews is the way to really uptick it quickly. So if you're getting started, I tell everyone 30 to 50 reviews is that first threshold that we want to get to as soon as possible. So every patient we treat, we want to make sure that we're getting a review. If you're brand new, that's how people know they can trust you, right? As other people. It's crowdsourcing that information. So at the beginning, you might incentivize that. If you leave us a review, we're going to put $50 in your account for the next time you visit us, right? That review will serve you well. So I see a lot of automation of those reviews. And then if we have a really beautiful before and after picture, we always try to get that person to post a review, post their photo, allow us to use their photos and consents. But should be a huge part of every strategy.
How do you go about that? Because the photo one is, that's like a lot more of an ask than like, can you just
definitely
write something? It's like, can we stick your photo on the internet before and after?
Yes.
Like, how do you approach that?
So I find with before and after photos, it's scary to put yourself out there on the internet, right? So most people feel like, oh, someoe's going to see me. I'm going to have no makeup on. I'm going to be super swollen. I've been injected all over my face, right? Like, nah, I'm okay. But when we actually show them the before and after it's been curated, after we've cut their eyes out or, just focused on the body part, if we can show them that and say, hey, when you found our spa, if we had more photos like this, where you identified with maybe the before photo, would that have been easier for you to come in, or would the consultation have been a little more, would you have been more at ease with the consultation process? And the answer is always yes. And so then we ask the patient, so here, here's your before and after. I want to show you what we've accomplished. Like, are you so happy with your service? Yes. Okay, amazing. So it really helps us to be able to show our work, because people want to understand what they're going to look like when they leave here, right? So it'd be really helpful for us to be able to use your photo. We have taken any identifying information out. Here's just your lips. Would you be okay if we posted this on our Instagram?
I think that's absolutely brilliant. And I think the way that you framed that is genius as well. So not just like, can we use these photos, or, oh, these photos look great, no, don't worry, no one will know who you are, but actually saying, like, would you have felt more comfortable coming for a procedure if you'd have seen this photo? Like, almost like reframing it to look how you can help others. So I think that's lovely. Gina, this has been a fantastic episode. Any med spa owners listening that want to use your services, tell them, where can they go? Where can they find you?
Yes, would love to talk to you. We do offer complimentary 30-minute consultations where we can chat through a question you have or any issues you're having in your business, and offer some, generalized advice and how we can help. You can find me on my website, which is www.themedspamatchmaker.com, or on Instagram at medspa_matchmaker. There's a link to book a free consult right from there. So we hope to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you for being such a great guest.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I had so much fun.
Thank you.